Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we sift through stacks of information, really pulling out those key nuggets of knowledge to give you that shortcut to being genuinely well-informed. Today, we're doing a fascinating deep dive into a whole collection of recent insights and updates from Lote Consulting. It actually coincides with their celebration of NAIDOC Week.
Which is, the annual event celebrating the history, culture, achievements of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples in Australia.
Exactly. And we've got a CEO message plus 5 articles covering, well, everything from bushfire safety regs to cybersecurity.
Yeah, it's a really great opportunity to see how a forward-thinking organization like Lote tackles these, complex challenges. They seem to be integrating modern tech expertise with a really profound respect for heritage and this idea of continuous learning.
So our goal here is to pull out what's really significant, connect the dots, and figure out why these topics matter to you, the listener.
Let's do it.
Okay, so let's unpack this. We're starting with the CEO's message. It's from Dr. Maher Maghrabi, and it's centered around NAIDOC Week 2025, commemorating 50 years of honoring Australia's oldest living culture.
Right. And what's really compelling here is how the theme, the next generation, strength, vision, and legacy, really mirrors Lote Consulting's own core values. It's not just about, business strategy. It's about building lasting legacies, fostering new leaders, and recognizing that potential within communities, all while drawing on collective wisdom.
And Dr. Maghrabi makes this powerful point that integrating traditional perspectives actually strengthens their work. In areas like fire safety, risk, security, it's not just a nod to heritage, is it? It's framed as invaluable insight. How do you see that actually working? Ancient wisdom informing modern tech.
Well, it's quite a profound shift, really. Instead of seeing traditional knowledge as, separate or historical, Lote seems to recognize it as a vital data set, maybe an overlooked one. I mean, imagine thousands of years of observational data on land management, weather, ecology. When you merge that with modern scientific modeling, with engineering, you potentially create solutions that are not just technically sound, but also deeply tuned into the environment, the human factors. Dr. Maghrabi emphasizes Lote's own journey, too, starting with this bold vision for global safety and security, built on rigorous expertise, but also a people-first approach. So this integration seems core to them.
And they certainly seem to be delivering. Expanding into cybersecurity, compliance for critical infrastructure, government, managing major global projects.
Right, and evolving systems for more transparency, more intelligence, all while holding on to those values: integrity, excellence, continuous learning.
So the CEO's message isn't just a corporate update then.
Not at all. It feels like a call to action.
Yeah.
For their team, sure, but also for us, really, to listen actively, learn continuously, lead with purpose. It reaffirms commitment to past, present, future, sets a framework for the articles.
Okay, so shifting from that big picture vision to some crucial specific updates. Our first article is by Joyce Van. It dives into key changes for bushfire safety planning in New South Wales, specifically for new schools.
Yeah, this one spotlights the NSW Rural Fire Service, the RFS Addendum to Planning for Bushfire Protection 2025.
Right.
It kicked in April 4th, 2025, and it introduces these strategic adjustments basically to streamline building processes in certain lower risk situations, but critically without compromising safety.
Okay, so if you're involved in school development, or maybe just curious how these rules adapt, what are the main changes here?
There are two key things. First, internal tenability. That's specification S43C9 in the National Construction Code. It no longer applies to certain primary and secondary school buildings.
Certain ones, so not all.
Exactly. It only applies if the school building isn't within 100 meters of a large, high-risk bushfire vegetation area, defined as vegetation category 1 land over 5 hectares. So basically, if a school isn't right next to a massive patch of high-risk bushland, these specific internal requirements, things like special glazing or sealing, are deemed unnecessary.
That sounds like a pretty sensible adjustment, balancing safety and practicality. What's the second change?
The second change involves vehicular access. The addendum removes the older Special Fire Protection Purpose SFPP access requirements for schools.
SFPP, those restrictor rules, weren't they? Because schools have unique risks.
Generally, yes. They often imposed more stringent standards for access roads, turning bays, that kind of thing.
So by removing those SFPP rules, what standard do they use now?
They now align with the general standards in Table 6.8b of the Main Planning for Bushfire Protection 2019 document. So access requirements for new schools are now more like those for, say, residential subdivisions. It offers more flexibility but still ensures fire trucks can get in and out effectively. Minimum road widths, turning areas, grades, it's all still covered.
Got it. The article also notes, though, that while schools get these concessions, other places like childcare centers, also Class 9B, are still subject to the stricter NCC Specification 43.
That's right.
And it mentions Lote Consulting has experience with two approaches for dealing with variations, specifically S43C9, internal tenability, and S43C12, emergency power supply.
Yeah, this is where their specialized engineering, their bushfire performance solutions come in. Method A uses CFD modeling computational fluid dynamics. Think advanced computer sim showing how air, smoke, heat move in a fire. Lets them design mechanical systems very precisely.
Okay.
Method B is about developing a broader performance solution, basically arguing why those specific S43 requirements aren't needed for that particular building overall.
So it shows how expert consulting can tailor solutions when the standard rules don't quite fit.
Exactly. Custom solutions for unique situations.
Right. Our next deep dive, this one's by Syed Yamin Ahmed, keeps us on bushfire risk, but shifts focus. We're looking at critical energy infrastructure, substations, and battery energy storage systems, BESS. Super important as Australia moves to renewables.
Absolutely. And while these assets are, fundamental for grid stability and green energy, they're often located in remote, bushfire-prone areas. That creates a really distinct set of fire safety challenges.
What are some of those specific risks, especially with these newer BS units?
Well, a primary concern is something called thermal runaway, particularly in BS units using lithium-ion battery TechLib. It's this rapid, uncontrolled temperature increase can lead to fire, even explosion, and it can be triggered or made worse by external heat from a bushfire or even just ember attack. Beyond that, just general asset vulnerability is key. Substations, BSS, often near vegetation, rural areas, limited firefighting access, makes them vulnerable to ignition from outside or inside, like electrical faults.
And the bushfire itself creates hazardous conditions, right? Heat and embers?
Intense, radiant heat and ember attack, yeah. The heat alone can degrade equipment. And embers, they can travel really far, get sucked into vents, cable trays. That's critical for BS containers because they need active cooling systems, vents that could potentially draw embers in.
And if they do ignite, especially the lithium-ion ones.
Then toxic emissions are a huge concern. We're talking hydrogen fluoride, carbon monoxide, nasty volatile organic compounds, serious risks for people, communities, ecosystems.
Okay, so given these pretty unique risks, what are the solutions being put in place?
The article outlines several bushfire planning and protection measures. Standard stuff like asset protection zones, APZs, clearing vegetation around the site, also using fire-resistant enclosures, integrating advanced detection and suppression systems, thermal sensors, gas detection, automatic sprinklers, or gas suppression.
And access for fire crews.
Definitely. Ensuring robust access and egress roads, often following those same PBP 2019 Table 6.8b standards we talked about for schools, making sure fire trucks can get there.
One thing that really jumped out at me was the section on emerging trends and failures. Even with improvements, we're still seeing, 10, 15 BSS incidents globally each year? The article mentions that fire near Lake Ontario in 2023 burned for 4 days, needed robots. That sounds incredibly challenging.
It absolutely is. And incidents like that have driven a real shift in defensive firefighting strategies, particularly in Australia. In remote spots or maybe lower risk environments, the strategy now might be to let a BS container actually burn out under supervision.
Really? Just let it burn.
Well, under supervision, yes. While actively cooling the adjoining containers to stop the fire spreading, rather than trying direct suppression on the burning unit, which can be dangerous and sometimes ineffective with lib fires. It aligns with international guidelines like NFPA 855.2023. It's a stark reminder, isn't it? Even with cutting-edge tech, nature sets the terms. Adaptation is key.
Okay, moving from physical fires to digital ones. Our next article by Farjad Mahmood tackles password safety, something we all deal with. This really hits home.
It really does. And this piece underscores how passwords, our supposed first line of defense, often remain our biggest vulnerability. The stats are pretty alarming. In 2025, get this, 94% of passwords are still either reused or just weak.
94%. So only 6% are unique. That's
Yeah.
incredible. It means almost everyone is falling into what the article calls lazy patterns in reuse. What's the fallout from that?
The scale is just huge. In 2024 alone, 3.2 billion credentials were stolen. And 75% of those got nicked by InfoStealer malware. These stolen credentials, they fuel everything. Account takeovers, ransomware. The cost is massive, too. These average data breach costs hit $4.45 million in 2023.
And the kicker, the top 5 stolen passwords in 2025 are still things like 123456 admin password.
hmm
Seriously.
It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? Why do these bad habits stick around after decades of security warnings? Is it just carelessness?
Or something deeper.
The article points squarely at the human factor. The average person is juggling, what, 100 to 150 online accounts? Some people up to 255. It's not just laziness, it's a huge cognitive load. Security versus usability. It's a constant battle.
So true.
78% of people admit reusing passwords, and a really scary 13% use the same password for everything. Explains why password issues cause 38% of all attacks.
And over a third of users feel overwhelmed trying to be more secure, so they just kind of give up. That's worrying. So if we can't just rely on people being perfect, what's the solution?
Well, that's why the focus is shifting beyond just the password. Multi-factor authentication MFA and two-factor authentication 2FA are presented as absolutely crucial. Microsoft research suggests MFA blocks 99.9% of automated attacks. The principle is simple but strong. Require multiple proof points.
Like something you know, something you have.
Exactly, something you know like your password, something
Yeah.
you have like your phone or a security key. And increasingly, something you are biometrics, fingerprints, Face ID.
Okay. Now, 2FA adoption is growing 78% personal, 73% work accounts by 2024, but the article notes gaps.
Yeah.
Like 23% of U.S. employees not using it at work.
That gap is significant, and the tech keeps evolving to tackle things like MFA fatigue, getting too many prompts with solutions like number matching. The article also looks ahead to the future of access security, AI, machine learning, advanced cryptography opening new doors.
And zero trust architecture.
Right. That's reshaping security too. The idea is continuous verification. Don't trust just because someone's on the network. Verify constantly.
So for our listeners, what's the practical takeaway? How do you actually boost security without demanding the impossible?
The article gives 5 really solid recommendations. It's about balancing better current practices with prepping for what's next. 1, implement MFA universally. Seriously, it blocks most automated attacks.
Okay, number 1, defense.
2, use password managers. They handle the cognitive load, create strong, unique passwords, solves the reuse problem.
Makes sense.
3, educate users. Develop robust policies. Human habits are hard to change, but education and clear rules help.
Right.
4, embrace zero trust architecture. Shift that security mindset to continuous verification. And 5, prepare for a passwordless future. Think biometrics, passkeys. It's the long-term strategic direction.
Great summary. Okay, our next deep dive, this one's by Jed Hukill and Dr. Mara Maghrabi again, builds on that security theme. It focuses on critical infrastructure risk management, the real backbone systems of society, right?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Energy, water, transport. They're undeniably vital. Communities, economy, public safety all depend on them. And with climate volatility, cyber threats, growing interdependencies, well, their resilience has never been more critical.
The article mentions Australia's SOCI Act, Security of Critical Infrastructure Act 2018, which mandates operators have a risk management program, a SRMP. But it emphasizes that true resilience is more than just compliance, right? It's about anticipating disruption, adapting to change. Can you give us a sense of what that means practically?
Yeah, this is where it gets very real for everyone. The article uses some powerful what-if scenarios. Imagine a subtle cyber attack messing with the energy grid, intermittent blackouts, economic chaos, or a massive flood taking out a water treatment plant, food shortages, health crises follow.
Scary stuff.
Or a bushfire damaging vital comms links, a cyber attack on a port grinding supply chains to a halt. These aren't isolated failures. They show how one sector collapsing can trigger wider problems, systemic risk.
So what strategies are in place to try and prevent that, or at least manage it?
Australia's 2023 Critical Infrastructure Resilience Strategy, developed by CISC. The Cyber and Infrastructure Security Center really emphasizes government-industry collaboration, using the Trusted Information Sharing Network, TSN. A key part is designating systems of national significance, SUNLS, over 200 critical assets across different sectors.
And these SUNLS assets face tougher rules.
They do. Enhanced cybersecurity obligations, mandatory incident response plans, regular drills and exercises, vulnerability assessments, real-time threat sharing with the Australian Signals Directorate. It's serious stuff.
The article then dives into the SRMP itself, the risk management program. says it needs to be comprehensive, audit-ready, but what makes actually doing that complex?
Well, there are several hurdles. Data sharing can be tricky, think IP, commercial secrets, integrating new security into old legacy systems, OT systems that weren't built for today's threats, resource constraints, especially for smaller operators, and just the fact that threats and regulations are always changing. It's a constant moving target.
Right. The article lays out a structured SORAM-P process based on ISO 31000 standards, defines scope, identified risks, cyber, physical, environmental, analyze likelihood, impact, assess consequences, and then implement risk treatment strategies. What are those main strategies?
There are basically four main ways to treat an identified risk. One is avoidance, just eliminate the risk. Choose a less vulnerable site for a new facility, decommission old risky software.
Okay, get rid of it.
Two is reduction mitigation. This is the most common. Using technical controls like firewalls, MFA, procedural controls like incident plans, training, and engineering controls like redundancy, climate resilient design. Think CPED for physical security too, designing security into the environment.
Got it. Reducing the likelihood or impact.
Three is transfer, shifting the risk, usually financially. Insurance is the classic example, or outsourcing critical functions to specialists.
Right. Let someone else handle it or pay for the consequences.
And four is acceptance. This is an informed decision to just live with the residual risk, usually because fixing it costs more than the potential impact, or the risk is deemed acceptably low.
And crucially, the article stresses continuous improvement and monitoring. It's not a one-and-done thing.
Not at all. It has to be a cycle. Regular reviews, monitoring performance with KPIs, learning lessons from incidents or drills, ongoing engagement with others through platforms like CISC and TISN. It keeps the whole program agile and responsive.
Okay, we've covered modern fire safety, complex risk management. Our final deep dive by Abdulkavi Siddiq and Zina Shah brings us right back to NAIDOC Week's core theme. It's about Victor Stephenson's book, Fire Country, Learning and Listening to Aboriginal Cultural Practices. Connects beautifully back to Dr. Mugrabi's message on integrating traditional views.
Yeah, this article really highlights how events like the devastating Black Saturday fires in 2009 spurred this renewed interest in Indigenous land management. It underscores this, well, unique opportunity to improve land resilience, community resilience, by integrating Aboriginal cultural practices, but crucially, doing it with deep respect for Indigenous knowledge itself.
A key practice mentioned is cultural burning, using low-intensity controlled burns. Something Aboriginal communities have done for millennia, right, to boost biodiversity, prevent massive fires.
Exactly. The NSW-RFS has adopted aspects of it, often calling it hazard reduction burns, or HRBs, mainly for asset protection zones. But as the article quotes Stephenson, there's a difference. Western fire regimes are based on hazard reduction, he says. They often miss the layers of cultural and environmental connections in Aboriginal fire knowledge, which is based on harmony in nature.
So it's a philosophical difference, too, not just technique.
That seems to be the point. And Stephenson's book really champions the concept of cool burning. Why is that so significant? Cool burning describes fires that are deliberately lower intensity. They gently clear fuel loads without the harshness or rapid spread you might see in some HRBs. It's incredibly holistic. It considers a huge range of factors: time of day, weather, specific plants and animals, habitats. The aim is safety for people and animals, letting wildlife move away and return. It even helps green shoots regrow afterwards.
There's that fascinating example with Banksias, how a cool fire goes underneath, clears dead leaves.
Right. And the Banksia itself can kind of suck up the fire, using the heat to germinate its hard seeds, but without the fire racing through the surrounding vegetation.
That's amazing. Shows incredible nuance.
It really does. It highlights that understanding how specific areas, specific plants react to fire is different everywhere. It requires this really diligent, intentional, localized knowledge. The article strongly echoes Stephenson's call for real collaboration between academics, land managers, and crucially, traditional knowledge holders, working with local experts who have that deep, multi-generational understanding of the land.
So what's the final takeaway from this piece?
It loops right back to the NAIDOC Week theme. It argues that integrating methods like cool burning and, more broadly, truly listening to Indigenous land management knowledge, well, it isn't just about cultural respect. It's presented as a vital, intelligent, sustainable path forward for environmental resilience and safety for everyone.
Wow. What an incredible deep dive that was. We've really journeyed, haven't we? From a CEO's vision of safety and legacy, all the way to the nitty-gritty of school bushfire rules.
The risks in energy infrastructure. Those very human challenges in cybersecurity.
The strategies for critical infrastructure, and ending with the profound wisdom in Indigenous fire management.
If you connect all those dots, it really underscores this powerful idea that true resilience, true security in our complex world, it needs a multifaceted approach. It's not just about the latest tech or rigid rules. It's also deeply about understanding human behavior, respecting the environment.
And valuing diverse knowledge,
Mm.
including systems that have worked for millennia.
Exactly. It's a strong reminder that the best solutions often emerge when we integrate different perspectives, maybe from unexpected places. And that continuous learning is absolutely vital.
Which brings us to a final thought, maybe a question for you, our listener, to mull over.
How can these principles we've discussed, holistic safety, integrated knowledge, whether it's the human factor in cybersecurity or the cultural connections in land management, how might they apply to challenges in your own life or your own work?
Something to think about. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We hope it sparked some real insights and left you feeling more informed, maybe more curious. We'll be back soon with another deep dive into your sources.